Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for those of you watching this at whenever you'd like. I'm very pleased to be part of the virtual ATI and welcome to my play shop. Definitely not a workshop, but a play shop. And I'm going to give you the official title. I'm going to have to look it up to remember. Enhancing our connections through improvised play and creativity, thereby expanding our view from ourselves, to ourselves, with ourselves, through ourselves, and to, from, and with, and through each other. I wanted to explain the first 14 minutes of this video. The next 14 minutes of the video that you'll see is me out and about on a morning walk and all the things that presents as play, and I'm riffing and improvising on that and how it relates to what we do as Alexander Technique teachers and as humans, endeavoring to be more human beings and less human doings. And I just wanted to say that I was unaware in my very first video when I'm out on my walk that my shirt, which says keep calm and play on, would read correctly, because as I'm doing it, as I'm filming it, it reads backwards, which is actually part of one of the explorations we're going to do later, is to read some things backwards. And so I start out my presentation reading my shirt backwards, thinking that's how you see it, but I understand that you don't, as I previewed that. So enjoy, that's what it's all about. Enthusiasm, embracing different things, staying open to new experiences, and exploring with curiosity. Here we go. Thanks so much. Have fun. Good morning from Wilmington, Delaware. I'm not quite sure if I can piece this all together. As you can see, I'm doing a selfie mode because you have to read backwards for my shirt, but that's part of the theme of my presentation today. It's going to be in a number of different parts, and I wanted to start out with it being in nature. And, of course, the peak, black, yelp, no, as part of what I would like us to do is to play with things, turn them on their end, take it from backwards to forwards, have an opportunity to not only plunge forward in life, as we're so good at doing, but also look at things from the other side. This is the Brandywine Creek, as they call it. It's actually part of the Brandywine Creek State Park, which intersects and literally bisects the city of Wilmington, Delaware. I almost said North Carolina because I also have my home there in Winston-Salem. And of course there's a Wilmington, North Carolina. But I wanted to start out in nature because that's where we start. The sounds of nature, the look of nature. Let's see if I can go on this other side and look up the creek, so to speak. Up the creek without a paddle. But we've got a paddle, our 2 feet, right on Mother Earth. So welcome to my presentation on play, creativity, and of course along with that comes imagination, and how we can use that to be with ourselves even more, with fun, loving, and therefore able to make an easier connection with others and see with a view. Talk to you soon. I thought it would be neat to start this presentation with some outside in, because of course we know that inside out is important, and we know that the more we broaden out into our environment, which this morning happens to include a couple ducks and stuff. Lovely other things that aren't ducks. The more we can actually get of ourselves when we open up to what's around us in our environment. Look at those colors. Wow. So being grateful, and of course stopping long enough to appreciate and attend. I love that word because in French, of course, attend is attendre, which means to wait. And when we wait, we get to see nature unfold, whether it be outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves. And the ability to improvise and play and ramp up our lovely, ever-present creativity so that we're being in the spirit of creativity is, of course, amplified by our willingness to attend and wait and be in nature. And we have mankind who's put its stamp on it too, but nature is not far away. More to come. There's something literally miraculous about nature, and about, I should say, water. The sound of water, the moving of water, reminding and remembering ourselves that we are, depending on who you speak to, 70 to 90% water. Letting things flow past, sometimes with turbulence, sometimes with pools of eddies of calm, but always in movement. And if I'll stop talking for a minute, you can hear the cicadas as well, still present here on the east coast of the United States. The sound of nature is quite loud. At this spot, I was able to see and hear the birds and the bees. And even from our littlest brethren and sisters, we get the idea of fecundity, creativity, possibility, pollination of ideas. It's really a choice how much we can bring that ability to attend, attend, and then pollinate the pause with possibility. There's much to be learned from what looks to be stillness in this water, reflecting the trees above, reaching up and finding their roots. Just this morning, I saw both a fish and a turtle in this very still water. And of course, what is our impact? Look at those concentric circles that radiate out so quickly with one little motion. One motion that sets the whole pool vibrating, connecting. The field of potentiality is there in that one motion. of course, I would be remiss if I didn't focus on the floral aspect. The bud, and how that mirrors the patterns of our brain material, the spirals of indeed our whole system. And the gloriousness of a rose garden, finding within one species so many variation. Color, shape, size, type, as Walt Whitman says, as far as the eye can reach. And that's just one species. Even within the exact same family group, there is variation. When one is ready to bloom, how long they last, at what stage they are. Of course, the parallel with humanity is a meant one, but draw any parallels that you wish. This is my play that I'm inviting you along with me, and boy, isn't that just so beautiful. So beautiful. And I encourage you to again see from without, see from within these parallels. How when in the light, things come on fire. When at full bloom and in their greatest potential, supported by the green stems and the roots and the earth, it is easy to see the blooming into fruition of what is possible when we are connected to ourselves and each other. I couldn't resist the opportunity for this magic of a little falling water. The sound, the shimmer, the look. And the attendant hues when in the light, how they really shine and even resonate. Still beautiful as they wither and pass. At times, it's easy to see how our differences actually accentuate our best qualities and strengths. How one's complexity is offset and in fact highlighted by one's simplicity. Difficult to say Which is the more beautiful? When they all have merit on their own. An oasis of sound, smell, beauty, the touch of velvet. Oasis is indeed what we can permit ourselves. I use the word permit on purpose because often an allowance takes a permit first. The decision, conscious decision, to allow life and the beauty to unfold in its own time. Which fuels the next moments of activity with more strength and resilience. Sometimes the color of one that's not quite fully ripe or mature is even more beautiful than those that are. So of course there's both lessons, fun, creative possibility to be had when exploring our environment. Certainly roses were the muse of many, many poets for what I think are fairly obvious reasons. But the connection of what they offer to we humans with their stages of budding, blooming, maturing, dying with grace, returning back to the earth for nourishment. I think those lessons are legion. I thought it might be fun to start our video inside by showing the notes I took for this presentation, for this play shop. Because hopefully the sign of a fun, playful mind and a creative mind is not one of columns, etc. And you can see there's lots of things we're gonna do here. Oh, there's the doing list, and then there's other things I want to try to remember. And I'm going to come around and be in the frame. So we are now inside after having taken our walk together out in nature and explored the creek, the water, the ducks, the birds, the bees, the bushes, the berries, and then lastly, but not least at all, the beautiful rose garden as part of the Brandywine Creek State Park here in Wilmington, Delaware. And we are inside my additional location, I call it. I still have my home in Winston-Salem, but I've added Wilmington, Delaware this year so that I have some easier access to professional opportunities and family. And I have a studio now in North Carolina and Delaware, north and south, and of course, I've been east and west with my global workings and my national guest artist residencies. So, back to what we're doing today. They say that breath is life. As your breath changes, your hands change. They're coordinated together. I like to remind ourselves And I love the reminding is, of course, our brain, and remembering is our body. So when we remind, we are connecting our brain to our body. When we are remembering, we're connecting our body to our brain. They're always, always inextricably linked. I like to remind myself and remember that the words conspire, which of course means to work together, to come up with some new idea, also the root for conspiracy, conspire, inspire, which is of course things that inspire you in your area, in your neighborhood, in your environment, respire, or respiration, and aspire. Of course, inspire and respire we use for breathing. Aspire is something we do. We are looking to go higher, to aim further, to imagine more, to continue forward, to have an aspiration. All of those words use the basis spiritus, spirit, which is also breath. So our spirit, how we are in our spirit, and one might say ourselves, our soul, is how we also are with our breath. And how we are with our breath, as I mentioned at the beginning of this section, is how we are with our hands when we're working hands-on with a student, or in fact, how we are in ourselves when we're working over the computer, maybe in an online format. So that's just a really neat thing I wanted to bring up as we start to do a little bit more of our exploration of play. At the beginning of creativity, what can we expect? Well, we can set some ground, not rules, but grounding ideas, possibly. Expect to mess up. This is the place to make a mistake. Mistakes are the fruit of creation and creativity and play. Laugh. Laugh at your mistakes. Laugh at what went well. Laugh at what went crazy, but maybe gave you another idea to do something else. Do something differently. Try something afresh. Be light-hearted. I love that. Light, of course, is the one constant in the universe that does not change its speed, that was here from the beginning of whatever creation or incarnation you believe in. Light was present. Light-hearted, all of our work comes out of the heart and hopefully goes to the heart of the students with whom we choose to work. So being light-hearted is excellent for this adventure forward in creativity and play. And of course, I wanted to mention that dopamine is one of 3 neurotransmitters, of course the others being serotonin and oxytocin. We're going to speak today primarily to dopamine. Dopamine is when we have curiosity and we're inquisitive. That increases our dopamine. Just by bringing curiosity into something, by asking a question, rather than being right and affirming in statements that are for sure and being correct. That does not increase dopamine, but what does is questioning, having wonderment, the possibility that something else might be able to come into being. All of that curiosity and inquisitiveness increases dopamine, and it increases our optimism, which also opens us up to more of our own resources. So, what did you have for breakfast? There's a question. Normally when I do a group setting of this, I have people come come together. And if you're doing this by any chance with someone else, or perhaps you can consider imagining this. Grab the hand of someone else to shake it with their left hand and with your left hand. And at the same time that you're shaking the hand, ask them what they had for breakfast. Of course, our job as Alexander Technique teachers and as good humans creating communication is to listen first. So that's asking questions at every step of this, doing things differently. Left-handedness takes us out of our normal habitual comfort zone. A lot of play does that. The other part of play I want to mention before we start into some of the explorations is that play, when you see kids playing around the world, many times in situations that are dreadful, but they're out playing in the streets. Do we see them not being joyful? They are playing with whatever they have in their environment available to them. They're coming together, creating new games, and they are full of joy. Joy, joy, joy. So what small things bring joy to you? And I wrote down a few things last night, just in case, as I was presenting this, I couldn't come up with any. This is going to be one of the few times I'm not improvising. A cup of apple mint or spearmint tea, organic from the garden. Hot tea for me. A shaft of sunlight in the golden hour. Clean glasses or a clean windshield for those of us that drive. Soft sheets. Comfy shoes. Just a few things that bring me joy, and I'm not even doing an activity. So play sparks joy, which sparks play, which sparks joy, all of which spark creativity, and all of that is hooked right up with imagination. There are basically only two failures that we can have when we're trying something new. Failure of nerve or courage, coraggio, and the failure of imagination. Both coraggio, courage, and imagination are skills that can be practiced, just like gratitude. Courage and imagination get stronger, more accessible, more easily available with practice. I heard a speaker recently speaking of our need to refresh, renew, and refuel. And so much of that is critical on a daily basis, not just weekly or monthly. Don't wait for a 4-day retreat, but do that renewal, that refreshing, that refueling on a daily basis. That's what part of this presentation is about, is finding your play in every moment. When you sit down, when you go to take your food, when you make your food, as you're waiting for your tea water to boil, as you're stir-frying your vegetables. How can you bring in more play into that? If you're standing, you can do a little dance. I mean, there are countless ways. We're going to explore some of those. But refreshing, renewing, refueling, we wanted to be doing this daily, and that's what play is the way forward, I think, through and forward into those possibilities of refillment, so to speak. As many Alexander Technique teachers have said, we don't decide our future, we decide our habits, and they decide our future. So we're going to we're going to, I was almost going to say work. We're going to embrace the chance to involve play as much as possible in our daily lives so that our habits, which are ever present, take a little bit of a backseat to being willing to step forward into something different. A different way to get up out of the chair. A different way to do your yoga. I have also heard that women and men of genius sometimes work best when they work least. Why is that? Possibly because play sparks inspiration, creativity, and work, or at least that four-letter word, is not necessarily the spark of innovative thought. So, working less, playing more, that's the relative relationship we're aiming for. Speaking of aiming, the back of my license plate, or actually the license plate, which is on the back of the car, my license plate has one of my favorite four-letter words. Many of you that have been with me throughout my times as a presenter know that my other favorite four-letter words are slow, rest, wait, and time. This one, and the license plate on the back of my car, is ease. E-A-S-E. So in our play, that is the invitation and the new road or pathway. Play presents a new pathway to ease, which of course is, I think, much of what Alexander's technique embodies as we link our thinking into our activities. So I'll pause here a little bit, and we're going to do some activities next, but I'm going to take a little pause now. Thanks so much. Stick with me for a little bit later. Okay, I hope you've had or taken time to have a little break. And we'll finish out our exploration of play with a number of different ideas of just things you can improvise with, have fun with, create with, and play with. So one of the best ways to play that we know of, and I'm going to go in and out of your screen. Actually, I'm going to kick off my shoes. I invite you to do any of this with me. I hope you've been doing your own explorations throughout all of this. I'm going to kick off my shoes, and I'm going to go skipping throughout the frame. You can't skip. I don't think you can skip and have no smile on your face. So skipping is one way to create some playtime, but we're interested in kind of transferring anything we do of these ideas to kind of just get yourself out of your norm, but just prompting yourself to do this as you sit to eat your meal or stand up to get your glass of whatever, or stand at the sink to do your dishes or put them in the dishwasher. So it's in normal life that we want to see if we can interject and inject some of these impulses of impulsivity, basically. So one thing, and I guess most of these you could argue that these may not be practical, but these are ways that you could also infuse your teaching with some of these ideas for some, possibly those who are less inclined to want to step out of their comfort zone. So you could try some backwards walking. And I'm not going to do moonwalk or anything, but Simply walking backwards, in and out of the frame again. And, you know, what does that call to mind? How does that make you see the world differently? What does time do when you go walking backwards? Perhaps on the way to the next trip to the restroom or to do your laundry, you can shift gears, which is always good. Remember the first part of the shirt, keep calm, and try some backwards walking. Reading something backwards. So I will take my CD, shameless plug for my CD, recent trumpet and organ CD, Landfall, where I do a lot of improvisation on the CD actually. But I'm going to read backwards something that is kind of exciting to read backwards. Worldwide residencies, guest and online NC Studios, flow free for teacher, Technique Alexander certified, and clinician, Selmer Khan, is she. Festivals, music, Eastern, and what does that make you do? Well, number one, smile. Number two, slow down, right? All of these things are inviting you into the spirit of play. The name of the CD is Landfall, by the way. And of course, changing your perspective is always encouraged in just about everything that we do and every conversation that we have, especially in these times. Oh, the other things involved paper, pen and paper, a couple of them. So if you want to stop, have a little pause, and grab a pen and paper, I will do the same, so hopefully I'll give you the time to do that too. Okay, some of these you're going to be very familiar with. And again, I just brainstormed this yesterday. So I purposefully didn't spend 3 weeks, except subliminally, but 3 weeks thinking on this. As I say, except subconsciously I probably did, but I just wrote a bunch of stuff down. That's the best way to brainstorm, right? Just no judgment, no criticism, just writing down whatever comes to mind. So you can close your eyes and write your name. Fun to see. Did it go up or down, and how was the spacing, and was it all on one line, and was it on a line at all, if you even have lined paper? Of course, you can also write with your opposite hand. Of course, the third step to that would be to close your eyes and write with your opposite hand. But I'm just going to try to write my name. And I notice much more, actually, in my body when I'm writing, trying to write my name with my opposite hand. I'm more aware of my entire body than I was in my habit, even with my eyes closed when I wrote it with my strong, regular hand. Very interesting. Looks a little bit like what you do when you're at the store and they want you to scrawl your credit card signature with your finger. Of course, we went over, you can shake left-handed. Speak in another language. Let's see. I was going to try to say something in another language. J'aime la musique. C'est une... I'm stuck on the word method, pathway. Anyway, it's fun because it slows you down unless you're, of course, much more fluent than I in another language. And it accesses uses other parts of your brain. For those of you gifted enough to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 languages at your disposal, and I know much of our ATI international crowd does, you have above and beyond ways of thinking because of what the cultures that are hooked to those various languages represent. So I love doing anything in another language, and of course on the spot it's a little bit difficult, as you just saw. I wrote this one because I do this a lot in my music world when I'm teaching music and teaching trumpet or brass. We can be our favorite soloist or orchestral or chamber player, jazz player. And I wondered if it might be interesting to be your favorite Alexander technique teacher. Now, you may not have a favorite because there's so many and they're so amazing. And I won't do it for the camera in case someone gets offended, but I have a few choice teachers in mind of who I really think are amazing, and you can practice being like them. And that's totally legitimate, honest, and fun. Of course, we're not really imitating posture, that P word that none of us ever use in Alexanderland. But I thought it might be fun to explore that, because there may be some ways of being that these teachers represent that you can channel as you are presenting. And I've kind of been doing that a little because they make an impression and they make an impact on you that comes out. Everything that I've experienced comes out in how I present. So I'm probably already doing that. Oh yes, this is a very fun thing that probably those in America know you can get at the Dollar Tree. And I don't know if they even have these in Europe, but ostensibly I think they're noodles to use in the pool to keep you floating and not sinking, because they've got a hole in the middle and they're somewhat buoyant. But you can do a wide variety of things with this on a yoga mat, putting it behind your back and using it to open things up. You can curl it around places and use it as a way to disengage your leg and lift it up. There is countless things, but just having this, it's very fun. You can hit yourself for emphasis, just kidding. It's just really fun to have something like this to prompt your playful brain. I try to get it in the most fun colors possible. And yeah, so having a noodle, it's fun to noodle. You can put it behind you. It's just very fun. Play with the noodle, okay? Was that like, oh, sing your name in space. And some of these things, this one I got specifically at the 2015 Alexander Technique International Congress in Limerick, Ireland. I took some notes from my notes and incorporated them into this presentation. So, into this playful workshop, this play shop. And one of them was to sing your name into the space. Judith Saxton, Judith Saxton, that high note was a little bit high, Judith Saxton. So that's really fun. What does it do for me? I don't know if it does the same for other people, but it gives you a lot more of yourself because you're singing, which is very fun, and you're using the space and you're putting your name into the space, or yourself. What in our ego selves, we are our name, so to speak, So that's a really fun one. Sorry I have to use my list, but I think, oh yes. So the whole idea of improvising a limerick or any poem. Let's see, what can I have a limerick about? Okay. I'm going to try to do a limerick right now. I invite you to be doing the same, perhaps after I'm doing it That way you can be thinking while I'm presenting my limerick and you won't necessarily pay much attention to mine. I'm thinking of the beginning of it and then I'll just riff it from there. Just got to get it started. A boy wanted to know about the weather. A man said, oh Lord, this is way harder to do for the camera. I normally write them down and it usually doesn't take very long. And what I wanted to say about, I was thinking leather, tether, heather. I thought it'd be okay and I could craft it as I go. But I've never tried to do it for the camera. That's okay, all in good fun. My point is, whether doing it for, on the spot, or really writing one down with maybe one or two changes and that's all. When I write limericks, I've done them for, weddings, people having babies, anniversaries, birthdays. I make many, many, many versed limericks, and the one rule is that it has to be bad, can't be a great limerick, and of course it needs to not be that dirty or anything. So by having that rule, if it has to be bad, I'm opening up my creativity because I'm taking away that aim for perfection. So obviously, those of you that have stuck with me this long in this presentation can figure that a lot of this play stuff both hooks us into an opportunity to inhibit, pause, and redirect, but it also hooks into not end gaming. I think I had one little thing to say about that. Yes, of course. You can't do something you don't know if you go on doing what you do know. So by stepping out into play and being willing to try to write a limerick in your, with your head and a video, which is much harder than I anticipated. I probably should have come up with at least a subject matter or something initially, but all of those things allow us to step outside of our comfort zone and step into having a playful experience, bringing joy in much of our moments, and living from a place of change as a choice. Because of course, there is no permanent and there is no perfection. And really what we want is just to be in the flow of time, so we're present for ourselves and for those with whom we're trying to create a connection. And all of these fun ideas and trips I've taken you on outdoors are all ways to continue to expand our view of ourselves and expand our view to include others as well. So I think that's about it. I'm trying to see if I've done all my circled things. One more thing, see if it's worth mentioning. Possibly. Think 10% less, take your focus and attention and cut it in half. And let things be and enjoy the different outcome that just came into being. Thank you so much for your attention and your time together today. I hope this has been a little bit of what you anticipated and a lot of what you didn't. Thanks again.